all of that stuff around the office.
Ah,
Hey, well, welcome to this really interesting discussion that I'm going to have today with Jamie, and just kind of give like a couple of intros around who I am, who we are, and and then we'll kind of move on to do the same for you. I'm Patrick Chopson. I'm one of the co-founders of Cove.tool, or we're a consulting practice based out of Atlanta, Georgia, working a lot in like energy modeling and sustainability. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is bring more education to the community of architects and engineers around some of the awesome things that are in the Inflation Reduction Act, things that are in the new things in the tax code, new programs that the government's been pulling together. And so we thought like, hey, if we could go directly to the source and kind of get that information and share it with you all, we really just wanted to bring that to the fore. So with that, uh, go maybe give us an intro around who you are, what you do, what you know.
sure. Thanks, Patrick. And thanks so much for inviting me to be part of today's conversation. And it's a pleasure to virtually meet everybody out there in the world. So, I am with the Department of Energy. I am housed, my roles within the Building Technologies Office. I've been working in the green building industry for over 20 years. I was educated as an architect. But early on, I decided I wanted to go a different route and utilize my architectural education and skills in a non traditional manner. And so, because of that, I have really worn a lot of different hats: educator, facilitator, change agent. I would say is really, you know, the hat that I wear every single day. I believe in the power of market transformation, and that is the work that I've been doing. I came to the Department of Energy a little over 3.5 years ago. I was at the U.S. Green Building Council for over 12 years, focused on the higher education world and helping institutions navigate the green building and climate action arena. And then when I transitioned over to the Department of Energy, I did so through a fellowship opportunity. So in many ways, it was a midpoint career opportunity to just dive back into the latest building science. And I did that with the residential team. And I quickly got involved with the Zero Energy Ready Homes program. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, I was fortunate to transition to a federal role, and I am now responsible on behalf of the department for this above code voluntary program. So I spend most of my time in the new construction residential space. I should also mention that I do teach on the side in the evening at Catholic University School of Architecture. I am very passionate about the power of knowledge and transformation through education. And so with that, I am hoping to cultivate the next generation of design professionals.
No, that's super cool. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is just the role that, this is going to play in decarbonization and also around affordability, I think, for a lot of the country in regards to all these different residential buildings. We're trying to there's a housing shortage, there's a climate crisis. And if we can solve a couple of those things together with some of these amazing programs, I'm so excited to learn more today myself. So with that kind of in mind, I'd love to kind of get maybe an introduction from you around the Zero Energy Ready Homes program and the new multifamily program. And I think one of the things we discussed that was super interesting is all the changes in terms of like removing caps on sizes of buildings, things like that. So I'd love to just kind of like dive right in and learn a little bit more about that as well. Super cool.
Yeah, fantastic. The Zero Energy Ready Homes program has been in existence since 2013, and they had a version 1 up until the end of 2022 when we transitioned and published to a version 2. The version 1 was primarily focused on single family residential and low rise multifamily. And so it capped off at 5 stories. When I joined the department and started to work with this team, there was conversation on the Hill and amongst various advocacy groups about potential climate legislation. And with that, we started to hear a bit about a tax credit known as the Builder Tax Credit 45L that could potentially get rewritten as part of this climate legislation passage. So where we are now is that climate legislation has passed, the Inflation Reduction Act, and it did rewrite the 45L tax credit, which allows for builders and developers to claim a certain amount dependent on the building typology that they have constructed. And that's for residential projects. So we knew that was a possibility. It meant that the team started looking at, what if we were to lift this height requirement for multifamily? Could we roll out a certification program for any multifamily project? Also, what could we be doing more in the manufactured housing space, particularly to deal with that housing supply shortage and affordability issues that we have? So as of today, now, I love to be able to say to folks, we have a residential certification pathway for every building typology in this sector. Our version 2, single family, launched at the end of 2022. Our version 2, this is the new multifamily program, launched at the end of 2023. In this calendar year, it is open for optional use by, again, any multifamily project. Starting January 1st of 25, it will be the required certification pathway if you're working on a multifamily project. One update that we have just made in terms of the types of multifamily projects, because I think this is also, if you're working on a large scale development project that includes single family, townhouses, maybe apartment style, townhouses have moved to our single family program. So that is a little bit of a change that just came out. We received some market feedback on that. So we've got this pathway, and manufactured housing, we launched a pilot. And so that's in process right now.
Oh, that's so cool. And let's say some of the best case scenarios, like maybe you get some of the credits. What are some of the incentives that kind of roll into that make it super interesting for like an architect or a developer to be able to take advantage of the program and maybe change the dynamics of a deal? Or in some of these, there's like incentives per square foot or total value per unit. It'd be really curious to kind of like get some color around like some of those best case scenarios where maybe the architect is paying attention and getting out all the things that they can get. I'd be curious to kind of hear some of the really interesting scenarios that you've seen.
Yeah, and I want to start with what's required as part of the certification, because if folks are probably familiar with other green building certification programs or rating systems like the LEED program or the WELL program, this program is a little bit different, and it's hard to compare. It's not an apples to apples comparison. This program requires, first and foremost, you do a series of measures. So unlike the LEED program where you have to meet prerequisites for each of the credit categories in LEED, and then you identify the credits based on your owner's project requirements, and then each credit will give you a number of points, and then you get to a certain certification level. The DOE program is an all or nothing, and there aren't any certification levels. So that's just an important distinction to make. We start with the model code. And so we require right now the 2021 residential code. The 2024 residential code was just published last month. So we are looking at the code updates right now. That's the first step. The second step is that we require the Energy Star new construction residential certification. And the Energy Star program is really going to get at all of your efficiency measures. We layer upon that a requirement to get the Indoor Air Plus certification, which is another program that the Environmental Protection Agency runs. And that's going to really tackle your indoor environmental quality strategies and technologies, materials, and resources. And then we layer on additional requirements around water, moisture management, and we have these ready requirements because, again, we want to see as many buildings get to a zero energy future, but we also know that in the space of market transformation, we can only pull the market so quickly. We don't want to lose the market. And so there are these ready measures. You need to have the building ready to accept your future renewables. You need to have the building ready to accept your electrification technologies. So your heat pump water heater, your electric vehicle. So those measures, and that was part of our version 2 upgrade. That was not in the version 1. This is the version 2, is all layered in. So that's for, again, single family, multifamily, and then we have it for our manufactured housing. The 45L tax credit incentivizes builders and developers. So the eligible contractor, the company that is actually constructing the building, can take this tax credit in the year that the property is acquired. And so what they get is $5,000 if they fall into that single family program, $5,000 per housing unit. If you're in a multifamily scenario, it is $1,000 per unit. Unless you meet the prevailing wage requirement in your locale, then it goes up to $5,000.
Wow.
And for the zero energy ready homes, that's a higher level of the tax credit. There's a lower level, and that's for Energy Star. So Energy Star is less than that. What we are hearing from builders, I was just at an event 2 weeks ago, talking to a lot of single family, a lot of the production builders, national production builders. In some cases, Energy Star, we always require the latest version of Energy Star. And the way the Energy Star program works, it's really dependent state by state, and they tell you which version. And so there is, if you're in a state where maybe right now you're working on projects that meet the 3.1 standard and you're getting to the 3.2 standard, we've heard that jump can be a little bit, but it makes a lot of sense. If you're going to do Energy Star and you're going to focus on 3.2 for Energy Star, you might as well go up to the DOE level, and you get a larger tax credit, which can then make up for some of the capital outlay for those projects. So we're really looking at this as a whole buildings, healthy, durable, safe, affordable housing options, again, for all these different building typologies.
And that's amazing on the prevailing wage requirements as well. Just seeing, because I know the whole idea behind some of this stuff was to create jobs as well, to make sure that those jobs are high quality. And then to see that it also leads to benefits to the developer and the architect and the contractor and everyone who's trying to pull this together. It's really, really exciting. And I think that the thing that, a lot of times you're just trying to validate when you're doing a project is, will these changes to make it more efficient or complying with these things will actually change the nature of the deal? And from what we can tell from looking at some of the different things, it's like, if you were already going to run an energy model to get code compliance, it's not that much more difficult to get it third-party validated for something, or to be able to, if you're already running a 9.1 compliance model, you can switch the standard that you're trying to comply with. And it may not be as big of a jump to go from, the one version of the code, you go one more up, it's not that big of a deal. And I know a lot of states have also been adopting the new energy codes as well. We see that in places like New Mexico or New Jersey, places that maybe you wouldn't think about those states being the most up to date with their codes, but their codes are up to date now. And actually just maybe even meeting code is going to put you in the range to actually qualify for some of these incentives. I think that the ability of those two pieces to come together, where we have code updates and incentives coming together to do the right thing, and also just do what you're going to have to do anyway.
Right.
I think in the past, maybe there was a larger disconnect between code minimum and some of these programs. And now that it's closer, it feels like the kind of ideal situation for the industry to kind of get over their aversion to like doing what we need to do from a climate risk perspective. We can see that with like Asheville, North Carolina is, destroyed by a hurricane. It does add more urgency to some of these requirements. And even like, I've seen stuff from FEMA around their resiliency and like all these studies that are being done. And it kind of like seems like there's more holistic thinking from the outside.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure how it feels like being inside the government, but it does feel as an external observer that many of these programs and many different departments seem to be collaborating more closely together. Is that kind of like what you're experiencing?
Absolutely. We have a building energy codes program within the Building Technologies Office, and they've done a bit of study around the model codes and the impacts from the perspective of resiliency. So we can follow up with the webpage for this. There's a ton of information there, but it's really kind of fascinating. Their support laboratory is the Pacific Northwest National Lab, and they did a bit of study about what are the resiliency measures that are starting to appear within these code cycles. And as we're getting more and more efficient, the big conversation now is you can design the most high performing building, but if you're not considering the climate zone and the modeled future climate impacts and really taking that into account, we've also seen buildings over the years that have not weathered storms at all. And there's certainly examples of that. And then there's examples of communities that have weathered the storms, and they've done so really, really well. There was one that I saw last week on CNN, a community in Florida. It was right outside of the Sarasota area, which it made it through Milton with no issue. And with Hurricane Ian, I remember in Fort Myers, there was another community that was trying to become the most solarized city in the U.S. So we certainly have examples that we can point to. We need to be implementing the technologies and the materials and the resources. It's like we have all of the tools. I just say we just need the will to be able to do it, and certainly to have those added financial incentives. And another incentive that I did want to mention was 79D, which is a tax deduction. This is one that, truthfully, this program hasn't even considered because of this cap on the multifamily projects that were eligible for the program. So with 179D, it's all focused on commercial buildings. And so because the code for the commercial code starts at 3 stories or higher, this is where 179D starts to play into this space. And I was at the Living Futures conference back in May, having a conversation with an architect who brought this to my attention and said, 45L and 179D is actually a great pairing, because 45L can be taken by the builder, the developer, and then 179D can be taken by the professional firm that's working on it. And so for those who don't know about 179D, it's to qualify for this, there's a modeling pathway, and you must achieve a 25% reduction in energy and power costs compared to a reference building based on ASHRAE 90.1. So it can be claimed by either owners or designers of qualified commercial buildings. So again, that is just something else to put on the table with your clients, in addition to also any local utility rebates, which we're starting to really see a proliferation of rebate programs that are incentivizing high performance programs like Zero Energy Ready Homes, because what they're seeing from a utility standpoint is if they know, for example, that a community in Colorado is going to be all electric, they can plan for that future load. They are also trying to ensure that those homes can manage their own loads a lot better than we have done in the past. And so there's this really interesting interplay happening between buildings and the grid. And that, I think, is very new for architects. And as I tell my students now who are sitting in a classroom learning about everything, I'm saying to them, it's no longer good enough to just think about the building on a site. you need to know, always architects need to know a little about a lot, but now we really need to know about a lot more. You need to know about what's happening in the power sector and with the grid changing. You need to know what's happening in the transportation sector, because we're asking our buildings to energize our transportation. And we certainly need to be digging further into the industrial sector of where our materials are coming from in the transportation and the industrialized processes, because now we've done a really good, through energy efficiency, a really great job of lowering operational emissions. And we see that with the codes, and you see it since 1975 when ASHRAE 90.1, the first one, was released. We've seen it over time. We're getting more and more efficient. Therefore, the operational emissions are coming down. And now we're realizing that embodied carbon, what is that? It's a big deal. And I will say that in the residential community, it is very new. And there's a lot of tools for the commercial sector and for design professionals, much less so for builders and developers who are just like trying to figure this all out now. So that is also a very active conversation within the building technologies offices, embodied carbon.
No, that's super cool. And I know that like we really see embodied carbon taking off from like people are just looking for guidelines sometimes, but like, a lot of times people don't realize the nutrition facts of their materials, like brick, for instance. Everyone likes to use it, but that's like an enormous amount of carbon. If you think about you're putting mud into a furnace and making it hard, with heat, that's a lot of energy that gets expended. And maybe there's other cladding systems that are maybe better for the environment, or maybe you find an alternative like terracotta or something. There's could be many different options, but like I think now just a critical interrogation of like what kind of incentives we have, what kind of products we could use. There's a saying I've heard before that only God can watch all the sparrows. There's a lot of things to keep track of, and I think it's like technology is one of the ways that we'll be able to keep track of all that. I know many firms are employing like AI to help them look through documents, or kind of get an understanding of something before they go into a meeting. I think like there's lots of ways that you can leverage some of the new tech to just get that knowledge that you're talking about. One of the things that I thought was really exciting about the 179D was in the IRS published requirements that just came out, they talked about up to $5 per square foot. If you hit all the different requirements in terms of the tax credit, that could be a game changer for like an owner or an architect to bring that tax credit to the firm and identify that. And again, as we kind of were just talking about earlier, it's like the actual time that you would put into getting that tax credit, you're already going to do if you do the performance-based path where you're doing an energy model. And so I think that's kind of an exciting thing that it's not that much more effort, to do some of these things and pick up on all that. So I don't know if you have any other conversations that come to mind for you around like some of the tools and resources that you're kind of seeing that you guys have been making, because there's so many resources that you guys have built over the last few years, and some of them are quite new and super helpful. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I always love to promote what I would characterize as DOE's Building Science Library, and that's our Building America Solution Center. It is an outgrowth of a research and development program which has been focused on the residential sector for about 30 years now. And the Solution Center, the idea was that through these R&D projects and demonstration work that was happening with builders, there were a lot of really great outputs and guidance, tools, things that can be helping others through the design and construction process. And so the Pacific Northwest National Lab supports this effort and has helped us to build out this real treasure trove of information. And there's a lot of information in there. We can absolutely send the link so that you all have access to it. PNNL is going through a web redesign. So it is going to look and feel a little bit more different, but more intuitive also. But within that, there are wall assembly examples for the latest code. There are disaster-resistant toolkits that they've created. We also have some videos and some assessment tools. So again, that is a great place to start. We also have other resources on our website through our Better Buildings program, which tends to be more commercial sector building typologies and a lot of guidance tools, zero energy buildings guidance documents that the National Renewable Energy Laboratory has created. And then we've also, through a collegiate effort, which is our Solar Decathlon, which is a design build competition that's been going on since 2002, we launched an opportunity a couple of years ago to engage practitioners. So basically taking practitioners back to the classroom and helping them to get the latest in building science, and then allowing them to actually apply it to a real project. And the name of that program is called SD Pro or SD Professional. And we've got partner organizations such as the U.S. Green Building Council that is hosting that. They're hosting cohorts. It's virtual based. So that's a great place if you're looking to get a little deeper in building science. It's a fun opportunity to do that and connect with others. And then I also wanted to mention, for anyone who is looking for talent for their own firms, we launched a couple of years ago a designation program that recognizes post-secondary programs of study that are preparing students to design, construct, and operate zero energy buildings upon graduation. It's called the Zero Energy Design Designation. And my goal is to bring this attention to employers so that you can be looking to source this generation that's coming through classes, that are taking classes like the one that I teach, because these students, as we all know in academia, have a lot of time to spend to get to know softwares or, learn the latest. And so that's a great place to look for those emerging professionals, is through that program.
Man, that's so cool. I mean, I think we're not on an island. I think a lot of times when in a firm, it's kind of like you feel like you have to kind of start from scratch sometimes, when in reality we have such huge amounts of resources, and especially things around like assemblies or like guides, where you can just kind of like get in and read on a specific building type or a specific location, or like if you're doing a renovation in New York. I saw recently there was some study where they had gone through all the buildings that got flooded during one of the hurricanes, and they kind of listed, here's the things that they should have done to make sure that doesn't happen again. Some of those, like, it's so specific, some of the resources, that just getting in there and exploring those things, which I know we'll share as much as we can, links to those who have attended today. But if you all can really spread the word that there's so much resources, that the government is really doing a lot to make it easy. And, sometimes it's just, I think as an architect, we're kind of trying to drink through the fire hose of information, and we got a lot of stuff that's coming at us from manufacturers, and, we can kind of lose sight that our tax dollars are going to provide us with the most up-to-date information that's customized to our climate zone, customized the building type, tax incentives to make it happen. I think like the smart firm is the one that's kind of like bringing in those new students with the certification, bringing in all this information into the firm. Like, I know that's a big part of like some folks that I really respect over the years. They kind of do that research for the firm, but not every firm has that. Right. So, I think some of the folks that maybe if you're a 30 to 300 person firm, like you can kind of step forward and take that responsibility to kind of pull in some information. And it's oftentimes very small. Like, you don't have to know it all, just do one thing.
That's right. Yeah. And so on our website, on the Zero Energy Ready Homes website, we are updating that fairly often. We have an entire area that lists incentives. So that includes utility programs. It also includes, in the affordable housing arena, the low income housing tax credit programs within each of the states. And some states They will give extra credit if the project is pursuing the Zero Energy Ready Home certification pathway. We also have what we call our ZERH Education Hub. So we are making education freely accessible and available. We've got a 30-minute orientation overview of the program. And then right now we have a single family training. It's, again, all video-based content. You can listen at your own pace. We will be working now on a multifamily education program too. So again, that'll be part of it. And then in terms of getting on more of a predictable development cycle, we are looking at a 3-year development cycle. And we are just starting to consider what a version 3 for our single family program would look like. We would start with our single family program. That will go through a public comment period. We get the stakeholder feedback that we need, make any modifications, launch that, and then a year later is when that becomes required. Once single family is done and out the door, then we will start on multifamily. So again, multifamily is still very new. This is the year that it can be optionally used. Starting January 1st of 2025 is when it'll be the required certification pathway for any multifamily project. And if you have any questions on our website, you can contact us. I have an amazing team who very responsive. If you are at a firm and you are looking for, a lunch and learn on this information, please do let us know, because we are also happy to do that. Now that we live in a very virtual world, it's much easier for us. Instead of getting on planes and expending carbon, we can meet with people pretty easily, depending on the calendar and the schedule. So, always the offer there.
No, that's so wonderful. And I hope everyone who's on the call starts to take advantage of the resource that's being made available to you all. And I will also want to point out, as an AIA member, that there's been a lot of effort from the American Institute of Architects to interface and make sure that these things are, getting into top of mind for policymakers as well. So I would remind you to, make sure that, you work on these resources that the government's providing. Make sure that you're also leveraging those in your AIA chapters and places where in the rooms that, Jaime can't be everywhere. So make sure that you're spreading the word about these wonderful incentives that can really change the game and really help, from the smallest firm to the biggest firm, make a big change for decarbonization. So I'm really super appreciative of everything that, you've been able to share today. I know it's just barely scratching the surface and we could probably talk for 3 hours on all this stuff, but, hopefully this wets your whistle, gets you really excited, gets people digging around, gets those questions coming in. And then, your questions and the things that you bring, as you mentioned, that helps shape y'all's policy. And so I'm really, really excited to just get more involvement. It takes a community and a village to really make the change around decarbonization. So I just appreciate everyone who took time out of their day to check this out. And definitely let's keep those questions coming and really improving the built environment.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.